So our next speaker is Dr. Yi Yang. Last but not least, Dr. Yang is a clinical psychologist who has received her master's degree from Oxford University and a doctoral degree from Cornell University. She completed her postdoctoral work through Harvard Medical School. In her private practice, she provides therapy and consultation for adolescents, adults, and couples. She also provides supervision and training in the United States and China. Dr. Yang's WeChat blog, 孩子出国后, and YouTube channel, Yi Yang, are dedicated to promoting international student mental health and using psychology to better everyday living. Dr. Yang also serves as a clinical committee chair at the MGH Center for Cross-Cultural Student Emotional Wellness. Let's welcome Dr. Yang.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here with you today. International student mental health has been the focus of my practice and my writing. And there is a saying on the internet, the war against COVID-19 is like a soccer match. China played the first half, other countries are playing the second half, and overseas Chinese have been playing the whole game. Through the ups and downs of the COVID-19 pandemic, Chinese international students have been on such a roller coaster ride. In the beginning, coronavirus broke out in Wuhan and quickly spread in China. Many Chinese international students immediately bought face masks and other supplies and mailed them back to China. If you ask what was going on in the students' mind back then, it would be both the worry for their family in China and the motivation to support the hospitals in China. Shortly after the outbreak in China came the discrimination and attacks against people from Wuhan, from Hubei, from China in general, and even people who are Asian looking. This happened in Asia, in Europe, and in the US. If you ask what was going on in the students' minds then, they were feeling afraid, wronged, upset, and puzzled. In cities like Rome and New York City, we saw Chinese international students wearing a mask and holding a sign. It says, Asian plus mask does not equal to virus. As the situation started to stabilize in China, the virus spread everywhere we study, from South Korea to Japan to Italy to the US. If you ask what was going on in the students' minds then, they were afraid. They were afraid that they would be infected. At the same time, their families in China are also concerned about the health and safety of their children. So when students feel sick, say had a cough or fever, they're afraid that they might have coronavirus, but they may not tell their family because they don't want to worry them. Therefore, students tend to feel quite alone in dealing with the stress. And it's particularly worth noting that some students already have a history of mental challenges, such as anxiety disorders or grief. For example, having family passed away during the SARS in 2003, those students are more vulnerable and more likely to be triggered by all the news, case counts, and death tolls and tragedy stories. When the coronavirus first appeared in the US, Chinese students who study here started wearing face masks. However, wearing masks has been discouraged by the US government until recently. The Chinese students therefore felt alienated and pressured by the social norms. Meanwhile, they felt apprehensive about their own safety as well as others. They were also dismayed at the indifferent attitude among the non-Chinese towards coronavirus. Some students reached out to their schools asking for permission to wear face masks, making presentations to promote knowledge about coronavirus and organizing events on campus to raise awareness. These students felt disheartened when their efforts were not appreciated by the non-Chinese community. And quickly, the outbreak in the US escalated to lockdown. Around spring break, schools were closed. Students were They had to move out of their dormitories, and everyday life was drastically altered. Many students, they sleep during the day and wake up at night, reading everything about COVID-19 and talking to their parents in China about what to do next, which is, stay in the US or go back to China. And this is a difficult decision because in choosing to go back to China, their parents would feel reassured by having the kids back home, and students could escape a worsening situation in the US for a bettering situation in China. However, there are a lot of issues that come with going back to China. One is that the tickets are not reliable. Students have to book multiple tickets because many will be canceled at the last minute. Even now, many students are still waiting to fly back in May. Second, traveling poses risks of exposure in the airport, in the plane, and some students put on full protection gear and ate no food to survive 20 to 30 hour journey. That's quite tough. And third, after we arrive, there are going to be 14 days quarantine in a hotel. And fourth, students will then take their online class with a 12 to 14 hour time difference. And fifth, going back to China may jeopardize their future study. They may not be able to come back and finish their program, as they may not be able to get another visa, or their OPT may expire, etc. And another part is that some students have significant cultural and generational gaps and difficulty communicating with their parents. So living together for an extended period of time requires some adjustment, which may not be easy. However, choosing to stay in the US has its own difficulties. The situation here has been worsening, right? And also their friends may all left, and they will have to take care of groceries and other life essentials in a cautious and stressful way, and life can be pretty boring here. Also, they will have to kind of deal with their parents' anxiety about their safety. And during all these stressful times, to make things even more complicated, there has been hostility in China towards the Chinese international students. These students are accused of blindly worshiping the Western culture because they study abroad, and they're reproached for bringing back the virus if they come home now. Meanwhile, there also have been verbal and physical assaults against the Chinese in countries outside of China, making the Chinese feel unsafe overseas. I have heard many students told me that I feel I'm liked by neither China nor the US, and I'm discriminated against by both. People who discriminate against Chinese international students don't know what their experience is like and what they have to go through every day. So here I would like to call for a better understanding of the Chinese international students, and also more compassion for them. And above was summary about what the Chinese international students have been going through under COVID-19. My hope is that will help people understand them better. And now I'm going to say some words to the students. Life is full of uncertainty, and our mind, as a result, our mind is constantly experiencing the bumps of insecurity. This is the case in normal everyday life, let alone when facing a major disaster. Disasters drastically magnify uncertainty of life, and they shovel us into more intense, more dimensional, and more complicated insecurity. And this is painful, undoubtedly painful. Meanwhile, the international students are at the stages from adolescence to young adulthood, where when everything is still, forming physically, psychologically, mentally, intellectually. So what does it do to a person if she or he experiences global disaster at the age of great plasticity? And what does it do to Chinese international students as a whole? I think it is a question of worth of pondering. Uh, and further, can we and how can we guide them through the trying times and towards a positive direction in the long term? Right now, everything normal about studying abroad has been locked down, has been knocked over. But how can we rebuild? The first step is to accept our feelings in the process, regardless of whether the feelings are anxiety, irritation, loneliness, helplessness, rage or fear, or etc. And can we also look at ourselves in a mindful way in order to discover more about ourselves and to reflect more about the world? And secondly, we will need to rebuild a new normal around a new routine for daily life as a student. What is going on with the pandemic and with global economics, global politics is beyond our control. So much is beyond our control. But to a great extent, we can control how we live our daily life. To live everyday life well is easier said than done, but it is tremendously helpful, particularly the more uncertain the outside world is, the more we should focus back on the basics of life, like getting enough sleep, eating balanced meals, exercising, staying connected socially, doing things that bring joy, practicing mindfulness, reading, reflecting, etc. There's a lot we are restrained from and unable to do, but there is also a lot we can still achieve and enjoy. And as said above, what is happening has pushed us out of the daily routine and normal life. Furthermore, it may also have pushed us out of comfort zone and old way of thinking. Instead, we may have different feelings about life and we may relate to the world differently now. We may realize that we have the right to be more closely involved with the world and we have the right to express ourselves more and explore improvement. What is happening may have honed our ability to our tolerance for uncertainty and excited us to be determined to seek security more from ourselves. What is happening may have forced us to see what is most important to us anyway. And what is happening may have revealed the dark sides of human nature, such as Schadenfreude, selfishness, weakness, but it also has highlighted the positive sides of human nature, such as kindness, empathy, generosity, and bravery. In the face of grief and disaster, people usually go through 5 stages from denial, anger, bargain, to depression, eventually to acceptance. If you feel overwhelmed, unable to cope, unable to accept, there are free counseling services available under COVID-19. For example, there are the Chinese hotlines and also US websites to get telehealth. Lastly, I want to just share with you something I try to remind myself. That is, we understand that Chinese students are going through roller coaster ride and we have to face the knockdown and try to rebuild a new normal. And hopefully we can bring out the best version of ourselves and look at the reality beyond our own view and also participate in the reality beyond our own self-interest. And eventually, I'm open to discussion and know that we have some questions and Q&A time. This is, as Yadi mentioned, that if you are interested I write more about international student mental health and the family relationships on my WeChat blog and also on my videos on YouTube and website. So thank you. I'm going to give this back to the host. Thanks, Yadi.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yang. What a fantastic presentation.